Is Harry Singh, and I'm very honored to have this opportunity to moderate this event for CFS Society Winnipeg. Just before we start, we would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on Treaty 1 territory and that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. I would also like to thank Sid Dewan, Public Relations and Awareness Chair at the CFA Winnipeg, as well as Eva, to help us organize this event, and a sincere thanks to our panelists for taking out their time today. So before we begin, I just want to give a quick little agenda about what we have planned for today. Just a brief little introduction about our panelists, and then a little bit of an overview about their job profile and the fact that what intrigued them towards the career in finance and how they pursued their passion towards this industry. So that is the agenda for initiation. And then, of course, in the chat box, all the participants and the attendees can ask their questions. And then we'll try to go through as many of them as we can in the time span that we have allotted today. So thank you, everyone, for coming in and joining us for this event. Just a brief introduction about our panelists. So starting with Amit. Amit is a qualified CPA CMA with over 20 years of experience, spreading across multiple segments of the finance industry, such as compliance and risk, oversight, investments and portfolio management, training, teaching, business development, and then the product development. He's currently the Chief Compliance Officer at the Value Partner Investments here in Winnipeg. Prior to this, he worked in multiple compliance and investment management roles within Canada. And interestingly, he immigrated from India back in 2010 to Canada. And there also he was in the finance sector with one of the mutual fund companies there, UTI, and he was the regional head for North India there. And he was looking for the corporate treasuries, ultra high net worth and high net worth individuals, as well as distributors. So that's for Amit. Then the next panelist that we have with us today is Emily Burt. Emily Burt is the Executive VP and the Chair of the Board at the Cardinal Capital Management, which is located in Winnipeg. Emily works closely with the President on strategic planning and is a part of the senior management team where she leads the business development and the operations team. She also works with the clients across North America, where she helps and assists them in building and managing investment portfolios. Prior to joining Cardinal, Emily gained a number of years of work experience with other financial services companies such as Asante Wealth Management and TD Waterhouse in Toronto. Emily also has got her MBA from the Schulich School of Business, York University, and then also holds the Chartered Financial Analyst designation. She is currently serving as the president of the board of directors at the CFA Society Winnipeg, and also sits on the board of the CFA Societies Canada. Coming to our next panelist, Stuart Henrickson. He has spent over 30 years in corporate and investment banking in Canada, Europe, and Middle East, working for very renowned institutions such as Merrill Lynch and CIBC here in Canada. And he was also a general manager overseas for investment banking with the National Bank of Abu Dhabi and the CEO of Standard Bank MENA in Dubai. Stuart came back to Winnipeg in 2010 and he founded the Red Leaf Capital Corporation to provide advisory services to growth-focused companies in North America, Asia, and Middle East. And Stuart has been serving as is serving as the chair of North Forge Technology Exchange, which is an award-winning incubator for the last 6 years, and has helped many not-for-profits and other companies. Prior to this, in his current capacity, Stuart is the Chief Financial Officer at the Bold Commerce, and he has helped raise their Series A and Series B rounds of financing for $57 million. Over his span of career so far, Stuart has led over 17 billion in capital raising transactions, including IPOs, debt offerings, private placements, and structured products. Stuart has a BCom degree from the U of Manitoba and MBA in finance from the University of Calgary, and has both the CFA and CPA designations under his belt. So that is so far for our panelists in terms of what their achievements have been and how they have come this far in their career. Next, as I mentioned to you in the agenda, we will be discussing about a couple of day-to-day routines with our panelists and what they have achieved so far and how they have gone about pursuing their career in finance and have come this far. So I'm just going to start with the very first question, which is, this can be a general overview about, at a high level, how would you describe your job, like what you do on a day-to-day basis? So we can probably start with Emily, if that's okay.
Sure, thanks, Harry. Thanks everyone who's joining us today. I think this is a really great panel. I'm thrilled to be a part of it and honored to be asked. And I hope that we can share with you as much insight as we can on a career in finance. As Harry mentioned, my role at Cardinal is as Executive Vice President. So that means in my job title, I'm sort of one step down from the president of the firm. And that does mean that in my day-to-day job, I do quite a few different things involving management, rolling out the strategy for the company. So every day is different, which I quite enjoy. There's quite a bit of leadership side and HR side, because I do have quite a few employees that report into me. And some of them are located in different branches, not in Winnipeg. So sometimes it means travel, not every day, of course, but in any given month, I usually do travel to meet with our branches, which are mostly sales individuals. So my role has some sales component to it, some client-facing component to it, and then marketing and management. It's definitely a varied position. It's not like I'm just a client-facing representative. That's sort of one little piece of my position, but not everything. And then I'm also currently chair of our board. So as many of you may be aware, being on a board generally isn't something you're paid to do. So it's sort of putting your hand up saying, you're really bored and want more work and want to do it for free. So that's what ends up happening when you decide to either sit on a board or even chair a board. I personally really enjoy doing that, and I don't really look at it as something different from, my paying job, but I'm used to wearing different hats, and one comes off and another one comes back on. And in any given day, I would also be doing quite a bit of board work, either for the company that I sit on the board for or other organizations that I sit on the boards for. I really enjoy that type of work. Again, it's always varied and different and challenging. So in any given day, I would say I also do quite a bit of board work. That's probably my summary.
Well, thank you for that, Emily. Amit, would you like to shed some light on that from your perspective?
Certainly, Harry, and thank you for inviting me to this panel. Really appreciate it. And hi, everyone. In terms of what I do, I essentially head the compliance division of Value Partners. Investment management industry happens to be highly regulated. And being a CCO, I'm primarily responsible to make sure that we as a firm and all individuals acting on our behalf are following the securities and other applicable regulations. On a day-to-day basis, my role essentially translates into reviewing a lot of account opening documents for clients, reviewing marketing and sales communications, maintenance of registration records, preparing and submitting ongoing submissions and filings to the regulators, preparing training material content for staff, updating our policies and procedures to bring them in line with ever-changing regulatory world. And these are just few examples. I do a ton of reporting to our board and to different investment committees we have. I do a ton of reporting to different teams we have in our organization. And these are just few examples. Everything we do here, to be honest, from creation of a product to the distribution of that product, I think directly or indirectly, compliance regulations impact all these activities. And I get to be the one responsible to make sure that we are not only compliant, but are also working towards the best interest of our clients. And that would be the summary of what I do.
Well, that's still quite a bit of a work there, Amit, but thank you for that. Stuart, would you like to give us some information about this question?
Yeah, of course. I'm the Chief Financial Officer for Bold Commerce, and to give you an overview of what a CFO does, and it depends on the company. I certainly find, I think a lot of companies, it's more of an accounting function, which I am a CPA, but I've always said I've never practiced as a CPA. I've always been a finance person. I think when it comes to the accounting side, the importance is making sure you have accurate financial statements, but more than that, getting right down to the department level so that team leaders and department heads can make proper decisions. The finance side plays a bigger part of my role. I manage finance as well as our legal department, but finance is really the primary part. We're a company that has 3 private equity firms, large private equity firms that are partial owners. So they're always looking at analytics. So for us, the biggest change over the last 2 to 3 years has gone from reporting past results and projecting the future. Into what industry is moving and where we fit. So you have to have the accounting to make sure that your numbers are accurate and you're doing everything properly, including reporting. The finance side of it I find more exciting because that's the go forward where the company is moving to and how do we compete. That's really about it, Harry.
Well, that's still quite a bit of work there. Okay, perfect. Thank you all for your response. Not going to take again a whole lot of time, and I'm going to jump to my next question. So, if you were to go back, going back to your time at the university, what attracted you to pursue a career in finance? And did you have a mentor back then, and do you have one now? I guess that would be our next question. Yeah. So if we can start with Amit on this one, that would be great.
Oh, sure, why not? The way I see it is money plays a big role in everybody's life. And being a finance professional not only opens you to multiple career choices, it also allows you to manage your personal finances intelligently. Even though I did CA and not CFA, I've all my life worked with investment management firms. Investment industry is rich. And if you are good at what you do, it can be really rewarding. With regards to having a mentor, I never had one in my university days. And now, whenever I'm stuck and perhaps I need advice, I actually talk to my manager. He's a super guy, a very good human being, level-headed, intelligent, very helpful. So he has been serving the role of a mentor for me. So basically, they'll accept me as a mentee.
That's a pretty candid answer, Amit. Thank you for your thoughts there. Stuart, would you like to comment on that, on this question, please?
Yeah, I mean, what moved me into finance is I graduated University of Manitoba way back in '85, and I just found the stock markets to be fascinating. Years and still can't. I get, a strike in South Africa, and all of a sudden you'd start seeing the ripple effects to what that means. The prices of gold as certain economies and industries. And as I've gone through my career, I've worked in different industries. I was in oil and gas for a number of years, worked in consumer products, and now in tech. And I've always been fascinated by that cause and effect. In terms of mentors, I have to agree with Amit. I didn't have any. I don't think it was as common years ago. Like, I do have two managers I reported to over the years that to this day, I find that I'm kind of guided by what they would do. So I would say informally, and I tell people nowadays, you've got to ask questions. The formal training programs that it used to be don't really exist anymore. You've got to go into meetings. You've got to be willing to ask questions, find who's willing to spend some time with you, and really pick their brain a lot. And I've tried to give back over the years. I am a mentor with North Forge and have been the last 6-7 years. And I do try and mentor others with my experience. But I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to become the type of manager that they feel they should be. And they're going to take little bits and pieces from everybody that they work with and every manager that they work under. So I think you do see it more formalized today, mentorship. But kind of in the old days, and I hate using that phrase, but in the old days, it was really, you found somebody smart and you asked a million questions and you tried to learn from them.
Fair enough, Stuart. Thank you for that. Emily, would you like to comment on this, please?
Absolutely. So I found my way into a career in finance a little bit later. My undergrad degree was in fine arts. And then I sort of found myself working at an investment firm after I graduated. And I was there for about 5 years doing marketing and compliance. And then I sort of hit a wall. There was only so far you could get with a fine arts degree in this industry, and that became very evident to me. And on top of that, I was also finding that I was just getting bored. I was bored of my job. I wanted a challenge so badly. So that was when I decided to go back to school. When I first started my MBA, I figured I'd focus on marketing. And it didn't take me long to sort of realize, you know what, I'm here. I've got 2 years of my life that I'm going to be in school right now. Why don't I just take the hardest courses that there are? I get that maybe not everyone is like me, but that's how I looked at it. I'm spending, $50,000 a year to go to school. I'm not just going to take the marketing. I'm going to take the hardest profs, the hardest classes, and see what happens. And I'm the kind of person that likes a challenge. So I did that. And then when I finished, realized that I guess I was capable of doing more than maybe I once thought. And I really liked the idea of continuing to challenge myself. So started working in finance, more directly in finance, in a client-facing capacity, and moved from there into an investment firm. So that was sort of, I guess, how I found my way in. I wanted to be challenged, and it was the right industry to do that for me. When it comes to mentors, I would say that peers that I worked with that had either done an MBA or had done their CFA charter. I have a few friends still now that really pushed me to go after those things. And the other mentor that I have to acknowledge would be my father, who also had a career. He just retired this year, but he had a career in this industry. He got his CFA in the 70s and lived and breathed the world of finance. So, as much as I maybe early on when I did my undergrad thought, oh, that's not for me, I'm not my dad, I did find my way around to it, and it took me a little while to appreciate it. But he's for sure been a big factor over the years.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Emily. Now the next question is actually is what I can say everyone would have expected. So we have so many aspirants for CFA and the CPA program, and on our panel, on our panel we have CFAs and CPAs. So the next question is, what drew you towards the CFA and CPA program, and did you get what you wanted out of it? So that's essentially the question. And Stuart, can we please have your thoughts around this?
Yeah, for me, it was, I mean, a lot of times it's a function of where you want to get to. So I was working with, in corporate banking with CIBC downtown Toronto, and I used to occasionally get to know the Wood Gundy people at the time, and was really fascinated what the analysts were doing. And I'd never heard of the CFA, to be quite honest with you. So I did the CFA first. I just saw it as a way to get to that next level. And I always felt that whatever you do, try and pick the gold standard. And everything I'd read told me that the CFA was the gold standard for finance. And it was also something that was a global standard. As for in my case, I ended up spending 11 years overseas, but I always wanted to work in different parts of the world. So I didn't want to have a degree or designation that was something in North America, then somebody in Asia, Middle East, South America would look at and say, well, what is this? So I did do the CFA for that. I absolutely loved it. I felt like it was, like taking an MBA, but with far more depth, obviously. Everybody knows that now that's taking it. For me, I took my CPA much later in my career. I always felt as a CFA, you could project, financial statements, you could analyze, but in terms of putting them together, at the end of the day, I didn't like being dependent upon other groups. And I felt that was a gap for me. So I went back and did my CMA, which turned into CPA, late in my career, when I was about 50 years old, and that's abnormal. But I've always felt that if you feel you have a gap, go out and fix it. So to become a CFO, you can come through a number of different routes. I always felt accounting, finance, investor relations, treasury. There's a lot of different routes to get here, but more areas that you understand well, the better prepared you are. So that's really my route.
Fair enough. Thank you, Stuart, on that one. Amit, can we have your thoughts on this one, please?
Certainly. You know what? I did CA in India and I did CMA in Canada, and both are accounting designations. But after I came to Canada, I essentially went with CMA because I was trying to get into something which gives me both exposure to a MBA designation and an accounting designation, so to say a blend of both. And I think CMA was the one which offered me the blend of those two things, which is kind of MBA designation and accounting designation packed into one. So I went with CMA designation. I have been in the management roles in India, and I thought if I did this designation, beyond the accounting designations I have, if I have the management designation by my in my resume, it'll help me climb the career trajectory perhaps sooner and better in a better way. And it did work out for me as well. It took me some time, 6 to 7 years, but I did eventually get into management roles. So it did work out for me.
Thank you for that, Amit. Emily, can we have your thoughts on this one, please?
Definitely. So before I started my CFA, I did have a handful of the Canadian Securities Institute courses completed. I think I did the CSC, the PFP, the CPH, the IMT. So I kind of did all of those, had my MBA. But much like Stuart mentioned, I knew this was where I was staying for my career. I wanted to get the gold standard, and the CFA just was a given for me that I was pursuing this and I was going to get it no matter what it took. And it did take me quite a while. I had to take 6 years of my life to finish it, and it was so worth it. It was the most challenging thing I've ever done, more challenging than the MBA for sure. It doesn't help that you're holding down a full-time job while also doing it. It's a lot. It's a lot. And I just knew that to be in this industry and to be respected by my peers in the industry, I wanted it. I wanted to have it. Being in an investment firm that has, a dozen CFAs here, and to have them report to me, I want to know what they know. And that was sort of, I don't know, I just what I decided I was doing, and I did it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Emily. Excuse me. So for my next question, this is for, I guess, the participants here that we have today. Could you please share a bit more about your journey of getting your first job in the industry? The kind of hurdles that you might have faced, and how you overcame all of those. So if Emily, we can start with you again, please.
Sure. So when I started in the industry, I think I mentioned my first role was at a mutual fund company, and it was sort of your entry-level marketing and compliance type of role. In my undergrad, I had some multimedia and design background, and I was a good writer. So I sort of found my way into this position. But as I mentioned, it wasn't enough for me long-term. I knew I needed more of a challenge. But that's sort of what got me started in it. Hurdles that I faced early on, I think, were just, I struggled a little bit moving out of that role. I knew I wanted more of a challenge, and I actually tried to move from that position into more of a sales position on an investment team, and I was hit with roadblocks. I didn't have sales experience, they said. I didn't have investment experience, they said, even though I'd done my CSI courses. So I really struggled to move outside of that, even though people that knew me really well knew I was motivated and smart and capable. But I really did struggle, maybe because I was young and they saw, fine arts degree on my resume. I didn't check all the right boxes or something. So I did find it a little bit challenging to break away from that. To me, going back to school was the way to get past that.
Okay. Thank you so much, Emily. Amit, can you please shed some light on this, please?
Certainly, getting my first job in Canada is a pretty interesting story. We migrated to Canada in 2010, and I came 3 months ahead of my family. The idea was to find a job and to have a place that they can call home when they land in Canada. For the first 2 months, and I'm not exaggerating this, I would virtually print 20 to 30 copies of my resume every day and distribute them to anyone I could meet in downtown Calgary. Recruiters, bank managers, any lending outfit, or any investment management firm. I was virtually knocking every and any possible door I could. This hard work did pay off, and I did started with my first job as a financial advisor at CIBC. But it was quite a lot, to be honest. It was quite a lot. In terms of hurdles, my hurdles were very basic. I didn't know anyone, and hence had no clue where to start from. It was a new country, new culture. I didn't know how to drive. Just so that to put in context, I know how to drive, but in India, you drive on the opposite side of the road. So it was So it was everything, every issue, every problem was basic problem. I don't know anything about hockey, right? People bond over conversations about hockey. I knew nothing about that. The most difficult thing was to keep listening to a standard response. Whenever I tried meeting somebody, I would enter into a bank branch. I would try to approach an employee, just requesting them if they can get me to talk to their manager for 5 minutes. A standard response: please check our website, apply online, and if your resume is selected, we'll talk to you. All my requests asking them to meet their hiring manager or their branch manager even for 5 minutes usually used to go in vain. So those were my challenges, pretty basic, but I kept trying and I did get a job. Took me 2 months. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that response, Amit. Really love the candidness there. Stuart, can you please let us know your thoughts, sir?
Sure. It's somewhat similar to Amit in some ways, even though I didn't come from a different country. I did my MBA, and I'll talk about the MBA because my undergrad was a great year and everybody got jobs back then. But when I did my MBA in Calgary, oil had just plummeted and nobody was getting jobs. And I didn't really want to stay in Calgary anyways. I knew I needed some time in a head office environment in Toronto, but I knew nobody there, like nobody at all, no ins. So I knew that somebody once told me, if you ever want to get a job, go to the decision maker. So it took days to do, but I was able to find 22 different companies I chose, and I went after the managing director level, basically somebody who I thought, okay, this would eventually be my boss's boss. He's the guy that has to go out and find somebody. And some of them will like aggressiveness. So I spent days trying to get through to them, through the secretaries, et cetera. And I finally got through. I think I talked to 14 of them, flew myself to Toronto. I basically told them all a bit of a lie. I said, look, I'm going to be in Toronto this upcoming week, like as in 2 weeks from then, and would love to spend 15 minutes with you. I didn't have a ticket or anything. I was hoping one of them would actually spring for it. They never did. Got to Toronto, stayed at a YMCA, met I think it was 13 or 14. And they all said the same thing. Well, we'll see if something comes up. And then over the course of the next 2 months, I got 4 of them approaching me back, and 3 of them flew me out for second interviews. And the 4th one just gave me an offer over the phone. So it worked out great. And a lot of times timing is everything. Like for, Emily will know this. You don't know who on your team is going to leave at any time. And then when they do leave, you need to fill up a gap. So I was relying more on timing than I was on talent, and aggressiveness. And for me, it worked out. But that connection that we used to do goes a long way. People respected it back then, because if you're going to, come out and see somebody and just kind of force your way in the door, you're probably going to be that pit bull when there's a hard deadline that has to be hit as well. So it worked out fine for myself. In terms of hurdles, honestly, I don't think I had many. I worked in different cities, Calgary, Toronto. I worked overseas in the Middle East. I worked in Asia. I think if you have a strong work ethic and you're professional with people, generally everybody's willing to assist you or give you some guidance. So I never hit any really major hurdles.
Okay, thank you for that one, Stuart. Continuing on with my next question. So as a leader, you probably see, a decent amount of talent come and go. What are some of those key attributes that you look for in an individual? So can we start with Amit, please?
Sure. I've been asked this question multiple times. Typically, the question is somewhat phrased like this: that the job market is very competitive. It's difficult. How can I find a job? And I've always told individuals there is no shortage of work for talented candidates. Trust me. If you are good at your subjects, if you are a hard worker, you will not only find a job, you will grow very well into that. And I personally think that hard work alone can take you a long way. If you are ready to work, you can learn, and if you continue learning, with time, you will become good at what you do. In addition to that, I think integrity and dependability are two key attributes that I see in people who do well in industry. And I must add one thing. It is very difficult to train someone on basic values of honesty, reliability, hard work. If someone has these values and the required education qualifications, I think most managers would be willing to teach the rest. That's my thought on it.
Okay, perfect. No, thank you so much, Amit. Stuart, can we have your thoughts around this question, please?
Yeah, the two things I always look for and in order are passion and hard work. I want people that want to love what they do. You know, I said this to my facilities person, not an exciting job, but I said this to her a couple of weeks ago. And I said, I want you to love this building. Like, you need to love what you're doing to really be able to do what it is you're doing well, and to look outside of just what's been given to you day to day, finance, accounting, legal, whatever it might be. So that passion goes a long way with me. And I teach it to my kids too. I've always said to them, don't do in life what we want you to do. Do what you want to do. Then your job will never feel like a job. You know, I decided early on, I love finance. I can honestly tell you, I've never really felt a job is a job to me. I just, you know, I go in and there are good days and bad days, but I love what I do in general. So passion is number one. Hard work is the other one that I look for in somebody. As Amit said, that overcomes a lot of things. You know, a lot of the other things that you want, if they're willing to work hard and willing to learn, it all comes together.
Okay, perfect. Emily, your thoughts on this one, please.
Yeah, of course. It sounds like we're all looking for the same kind of people, really. And yeah, I would sort of add to that, maybe one other thing that I really look for is someone that is eager for challenges and comfortable with change. You know, when you start a job, your job description the day you begin there, that's not going to be your job description 12 months later. Like, I don't think that's ever really the case. It hasn't ever been for me. I don't think it's ever been that case for any employees that I've ever hired. I think it really goes a long way to embrace change. And what that means to you is that you're embracing your own personal growth. So what I think you need to grow personally is motivation, looking for challenges, asking for challenges. Don't wait for them to show up on your lap. You really need to pursue it yourself, and not just from your own manager. Ask other managers, ask other departments, learn from the people around you, and challenge yourself in different ways. You'll show yourself to be very valuable by doing that. Sometimes I think companies can be too siloed and you just look only within your own lane. But I think employees that understand the business around them and how different components work together can prove to be very valuable. Those would be my thoughts.
Okay, no, that sounds perfect. Just so that all the attendees are here, they can also start asking a couple of questions, and we'll try to answer them once we have thoughts around a couple of questions that we have with the panelists here. So one of the other questions that are, you know, the thoughts that we wanted to discuss about is the challenges that you face may be, you know, a bit different than when you started your careers in finance. Do you have any pieces of advice for the young leaders in attendance today as they embark on their journey? So for this one, I guess we can start with Stuart.
Okay. Yeah, for me, you know, a lot has changed. When I started my career, you know, promotions were based on how long you were in a position, whether or not you went out to get your MBA, etc. Nowadays, it isn't. I would say your career path is completely up to you. When you join an organization, as Emily just said, it falls on your lap to be that person that's asking a lot of questions, understanding the company. I find that my best staff over the years have been people that have not only known their job well and shown it to us that they've known it well, but they're going the next step. They're doing presentations like their boss or their boss's boss would typically do. They're understanding other departments so that they can understand what I call the value chain, not just your area, but the other areas that are combined to it. But at the end of the day, your career is dictated 100% by you. And I do find, millennials are a little bit different in that if after a year they're not still excited, or as Emily inferred, they're not doing what their original job description was, they get frustrated and move on. You don't have to move on. You can find opportunities at your companies all the time. There's very few companies right nowadays, maybe government would be the exception, and I don't want to say other industries, but for the most part, if you're showing you understand what you're doing, if you're working at the next level already, you're the person getting promoted. And if you raise your hand and say, look, I want to get into this area, show me how to get there, what do I need to do? People will help you. Like the mentorship is done so naturally nowadays that I think it's easier for somebody who knows what they want to do and are willing to do what it takes.
Thank you for that one, Stuart. So can the next one, Amit, can we have your thoughts on this one?
You know what, in terms of what advice I can give to all the participants, I think I want to share a small personal life story, and I think there's a big lesson for me, and I hope everybody takes that lesson. Everybody picks up something from that. In my first job for almost 5 to 6 years of my life, I was a teacher. That was my first job. I essentially ran an academy where I used to teach chartered accountants. Trust me, that was the best job I ever had. And when I say it was the best job, because I found that very fulfilling. We would spend hours debating one section of income tax or perhaps one problem of accounting. We would spend really a lot of time to understand everything conceptually, right from every single detail. But then I wanted to grow. I was running the academy. I wanted to grow. I wanted to grow quickly. So what I did was I started opening new branches in different cities. Just one person trying to now manage so many branches. What happened as I opened those branches, the quality of my work suffered. I was not able to keep up with changes and update my course content. And over time, the enrollments started falling to my institute. The key takeaway essentially here is that, never stop improving yourself. Never stop studying. If you excel at what you do, if you really are good at what you do, you will grow with time. You don't have to chase and try to make things happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight. Just excel at what you do. You will grow with time, and shortcuts are never good. That's pretty much it.
Okay, well, that seems perfect, Amit. Emily, can we have your thoughts on this one?
Sure. So a couple of pieces of advice that I would give young leaders. First, I would say, don't let discrimination dictate what you can accomplish. I've for sure experienced ageism, sexism, and you can't change everyone's mind, but the people that you can change, you will do it by proving your abilities, your smarts, and they will learn to see past their biases. And as hard as it might be in the moment, I've been able to not let it get to me and just be me. And I think eventually you'll be seen for who you really are. Couple of other things, accept that your career is going to mean continuous learning. It doesn't end when you finish your undergrad degree. It won't end when you finish your CFA charter. I finished my CFA, my last exam, I passed it. I think 2 months later, I was enrolling in the Chief Compliance Officer's course because the firm wanted a backup. And I was like, okay, I'll put up my hand. I just enrolled in the ESG certificate that the CFA Institute rolled out this fall. In this industry in particular, it's constantly evolving and changing. You might be learning in a formal way with additional courses, or it's an informal way, constantly reading what's going on in the world and in the news, and developments in our industry. My other comment would be to always put up your hand and say yes to things. May not be in your comfort zone, try it anyway. You're not sure how to do something, do it anyway. Take it as an opportunity to learn. And then my last point, I would say, we're all based in Winnipeg, I believe. It's a small world. Canada, it's a small industry. Keep in mind that your reputation and your brand spreads, and be mindful of that. Everyone knows everyone, don't burn bridges. Yeah, that would be my last remark.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that one, Emily. I actually have received a question for Amit here. Amit, so the attendee is asking, with so much of experience back in India, how employers here in Canada were receptive to your experience, and how long did it take for you to gain the lost ground?
You know what, this is interesting because I bet anybody who migrates kind of goes through the same hurdles which I went through. So first of all, the reason I got migration was because I was a chartered accountant. But as soon as you land, you are told that that the Indian designation is not enough. You have to have a Canadian designation. And that thing is something which you see also when you go and meet employers. They say that you don't have a Canadian experience, so to say. To some extent, I would say they are absolutely right. Accounting does not changes, but taxation laws, corporate laws, they do change. The way the accounts are set up, the RRSP structures, the TFSA structures, and other structures, the way investment accounts are structured here, those concepts change. You certainly need some experience, and of course, you need basic educational qualifications. Like example, you need a CSE or a FX just to get into the door. So in my experience, whenever I went out to meet people, there were a number of them which educated me that, Amit, these are the pieces from your resume which will help you, but you're missing these pieces. And I essentially did all what I found was logical and made sense. So I did CSE, and I enrolled myself into CMA program. And when I did all those things, that was the time when I got my first job. So to answer that in a nutshell, there are certainly a few things which you have to be prepared to work towards, a few designations, and then certainly once you have those things, your experience from the country where you're coming from does get recognized over time.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for that, Amit. The next question that I've received is actually is for all three of you, probably, I would say. Since you all have this MBA, the CFA, the CPA, and then the question is, while working full time, what helped you to stay on track and avoid a burnout with such a workload, and the fact that how did you de-stress in case you were stressed out with all the studying and all the work? So I'll let probably either one of you to answer on that one, or the three of you. So the floor is open on this one.
I can maybe volunteer to go first. For me, I think one thing I learned in studying for the CFA was, I don't know where I read it, maybe in CFA material, it suggested X amount of hours is what the average person studies. And I'll never forget putting on a sheet of paper 3 years in a row, those hours. And I would make sure that I studied the amount of hours. I started earlier because of it. But for me, it was having that structure. Like there wasn't an excuse. I had to hit whatever it was, 13 hours per week. So if I don't study on a Monday and a Tuesday, or, that just means more for the rest of the week. So for me, I just kept a focus and had a structured way of doing things. And that was the way I did it. I'm not very good at leaving things till the end. That wasn't it. And luckily I had a very understanding a wife that knew that was important to me. And that was kind of key. I remember I was doing level 3 and we were living overseas, and I was finding it to be really, really tough. And we had just had a second baby, so that, baby's crying, all that stuff, which I was about to use as an excuse. This is the reason why I'm going to drop out this year. And I went to tell her, and she was looking stressed, holding a crying baby in her hand. I said, I think I'm going to wait till next year. And she gave me such a look and said, "You're not waiting till next year. You'll get it done." So when you have that sort of support, no matter how it's thrown out there, it makes it doable. So you've just got to decide it's a priority. You've got to create whatever sort of schedule or working environment that works for you. And you just got to get through it. So I never sat around thinking, gee, look how much work I'm doing or how hard the job is or whatever it is. I just did it.
Okay, perfect, Stuart. Emily or Amit, would you want to take this question?
Hey, can you repeat that question for me? I'm so sorry.
So the question here is, when you were studying, full time with your job,
Yes.
how were you managing the stress? And then, in case you were too stressed out, how were you de-stressing, or, juggling so many balls at the same time? So essentially, that would be the question.
This is quite personal to me. It might not apply in all instances, but my stress buster has been my little son. While I was studying for my CMA, believe me, coming home to a smile of my son used to be one remedy for me to cheer me up. But yes, while I was studying for my CMA and actually doing a full-time job, it was certainly quite a lot of work. And just the way Stuart pointed, your spouse, if your spouse is helpful, that really goes a long way. And my wife has been a very, very big supporter, just like the way Stuart said. So those two things really kept me going, the smiles of my son and my supportive wife. Otherwise, I must say this thing, even the office, so to say, was pretty supportive. Like they did give me holidays I needed to prepare for the exams. They were pretty cooperative in terms of, and they understood that how important it was for me to pass this designation. So I think the help of all these three factors coming together just kept me going.
Perfect, Amit. Emily, your thoughts on this one, please.
Sure. I had a similar experience to Amit, that I had a really strong support system around me. My family supported me completing the CFA. My dad knew firsthand how brutal it is. My company being very supportive, again, much like Amit, giving holidays. Many people at my firm had already been through it. They were personally supportive. I even had, tutoring offered, and I took them up on it on different sections of the curriculum. I think it probably did help me that I finished my CFA before I started my family. I know many that have, done it at the same time or in reverse, but it was really, I think, just part of my life plan that I wanted to get it all done before I had a family, and I think that did help. And the last thing I would say, especially when it came down to crunch time, like the month before the exam, I went out for a run every day. So, you know, if it was waking up early to get a run before I started work and studied for 4 hours that night, or it meant a study break going for a run, like I really needed it to get out of my head and stop thinking about everything and stressing about everything, even if it's for 30 minutes. That was really important, and it helped me.
I wouldn't mind adding just one point based on Emily's comment about going for a run, the de-stress part. I felt for me, I had to give myself a free day every week. Like I especially as it got closer and closer, maybe not the last week, but I was thinking as she was talking, like, what did I do back then to kind of get away from it all? And I used to do that. I think, you know, it was typically like a Friday night. That was a night, no matter what, I wasn't going to study or do anything. You kind of have to have something to look forward to, whether it's a run or a workout or that de-stress day or just time with the family. I think that's important for people. A lot of times people get so stressed out on having additional challenges like this that they spend more time getting stressed than they do being productive. So anyways, just thought I'd throw that in.
No, that sounds good, Stuart and Emily, thank you. So we have another question where the attendee is asking, you know, for the company culture, you know, if you were interviewing with a different company, what would you be looking for in the company culture? What cues or red flags would you watch for? So again, any one of you can start with this one.
I can take this one to start with.
Thank you.
Yeah. You know, this is again something which I've encountered quite a number of times. You know, people say that this is the brand, this is the company where I'm getting interviewed, or perhaps have been offered a job. Should I join or not? From my experience, you know, this has been really my experience. It really does not matter, you know, which brand you are joining. If the team you are working with, your immediate manager, your team, you know, if they are difficult to work with and do not really give you a good working atmosphere, your life is going to be very difficult. You know, what will you do with that brand name? I think knowing the company culture and making sure that you are going to work with a team which is supportive really helps a lot. In my office, I can tell you the person I report to and the people I work with, they are phenomenal to work with, and they actually are an encouragement that gets me going up in the morning and come to the office. So your team, your manager, they really make a big difference. So try and look for teams where the working culture is really good. That'll be a big help.
Perfect.
Couple of thoughts I have on that one. I would say what was really important to me early in my career was feeling like the company I worked for was invested in my career and my growth. I wasn't looking to be at a firm that just wanted me to fill the current job opening, and you know, that's my be all end all within the company. I think finding a company and trying to understand if, you know, is it going to be them stifling you and, you know, you're hard for this job, that they're not supportive of you growing, moving up, getting more education and being supportive of those things. I would try to see if you can understand that. And I think some of the larger companies do this really well. When I finished my MBA, I went through the hiring process to go to TD Waterhouse. And I remember one of the senior people telling me that, you know, you're doing well at the bank if every year or two you have a different job. I was like, oh, well, that's really interesting. I mean, I think the banks do a great job of motivating someone young to continue to pursue new positions within the bank. You're successful here, you'll be successful there. You keep moving down the line, and it keeps people engaged and motivated. I really liked that because the first company I worked for in my career did not offer that. It was like, okay, you're in your job, you're doing a good job there, so we're just gonna keep you there forever. So, I mean, that's a very different culture. So getting a sense of where they want you and where they see you being 5 years from now, those are the kind of questions that I would ask to see if it's what you want. Do you want to be in that same job in 5 years, or do you want to be in your manager's job in 5 years?
Yeah, maybe I'll add to that. I think the interview process is very important, and you know, generally the first couple of interviews with the company, it falls on you to respond to them, get them interested in you, etc. But you know, once for me, I found once you get to the finalist level, that's where you can start asking those questions of your eventual boss and boss's boss to feel what the culture is really going to be like. And you know, I respect that when people do that with me, when they at that kind of a critical interview start saying, what's it like, you know, what kind of hours are you working during budget season, what kind of breaks do you give, what's you know, basically a what's in it for me types of questions. I think that's valuable because those are the types of people you end up keeping longer because they came in with their eyes wide open. So I think that helps. I'm lucky that I'm with a company in Bold that culture is very important. So we have the ping pong tables, the pinball machines, the massage chairs. Companies in Winnipeg don't have a lot of that, and I don't use a lot of those things, but my staff does, and they enjoy it. So you know, I'll see times when they'll have on their schedule, you know, 30 minutes massage, which I've never seen anywhere in my life. But I'll tell you what, they're refreshed and they get the work done and they're happier. So make sure that the company that you end up going with first or next, it's a company where you have a comfort level, because, you know, salary is not the only thing. You know, a lot of times people look at what's the salary and what's the title. Well, that's part of it, but there's a lot of other things that keep you happy every day going in and keeping you motivated, and that there's another job if you want to pivot your career a little bit. So think about all those things. Probably can't come up in the first interview, but there's going to be a transition where it's going to be the ball's in their court, the ball's in your court, and use it.
Okay, perfect. So one of the other questions that we are seeing right now is, you know, this is for you, Emily, in particular. How did you deal with the ageism and sexism that you experienced in your career, and were you able to use this as to fuel your focus on your studies and do better?
Yeah, I would say I definitely was able to do that. I think if you're starting in your career, you're young, maybe you don't look the part of an experienced, knowledgeable investment professional, maybe because of their biases or just, you know, what they expect to walk into a room. It does help to have the credentials, without a doubt. And I think maybe it's even a little bit more important to get them. I know I felt that. So maybe not for everybody, but I felt that I needed the credentials behind me as part of a way to prove myself. And then from that point forward, you really do have to prove yourself. So they have to see past who you look on the outside by experiencing the value you can bring to the table. So, you know, often it's funny, I found earlier in my career, say 10 years ago, that I had great success having phone conversations, you know, either bringing on board a new client, new advisors, whatever it might be, because I guess I came across as older, experienced. I don't know if I have an old sounding voice, I don't know. But then if I met someone in person, they'd sort of be like shocked, like, well, you're only 30 and what could you know? And but it's funny how if you take someone's visual away, they can see you better. for who you are. I mean, these days, every call we have is on Zoom. So I guess you can't hide behind the phone anymore. Not that I'm suggesting anyone should try to hide, but it does mean you have to sometimes go a bit beyond to prove yourself. And you just have to be comfortable with that and get comfortable in your own skin. And acknowledge that, you know, once you've proven yourself to someone, you don't have to do it again. They'll now see you for who you are and what you're capable of. So it's sort of that initial introduction to people. Sometimes it can be a little bit harder. But I guess maybe with experience, you can get good at that too.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Emily, on that one. Actually, continuing on to that question, you know, what role do the organization need to play when it comes to diversity and inclusion? So again, this is an open-ended question, and either one of you can start, I believe.
No, I'll take that one. No, let me start with that. I personally think on diversity and inclusion, I think it should certainly be encouraged, no doubt about it. But I personally feel it should not be forced. And what I mean with that is, for example, let's say if you have two candidates, and if one employee number one appears to be fit for the role, you know, the organization or any manager should not just hire employee number two to make them more diverse, so to say. I personally feel talent should win. But yes, there is no doubt about the fact that diversity and inclusion should be 100% encouraged if that is something you can make work along with the talented candidates.
Stuart or Emily?
Yeah, you know, because my career is longer than Amit or Emily's, I've seen maybe a little bit more in terms of the transition. You know, early part of my career, it was you saw diversity not happening because of barriers, you know, social barriers that were being put in place by employers. And it was almost like they had to be put in, you know, they had to be pushed and given quotas, you know, even when it came to gender. I remember when I was with CIBC, a memo, this dates me, of course, but really before email, a memo going around to all the managers saying, you know, if you have a position, it must go to a, you know, at that time it was a female, not a minority, but a female, unless you can demonstrate that the male is at least, I think it was something like 2 levels above that. And it was a shock that it had to get to that point. And that told you how bad in banking, you know, how bad the issues actually were. I think we're absolutely further along than we used to be, but you still see it. I see it all the time, you know, when I look at companies, how they're structured. And I think there just has to be, number one, an openness. There has to be a willingness to be representative of the population, but you're still going to pick the best people. But you have to understand that there are issues, and you have to look at it. In the early days, it was people just put their head in the sand and they didn't want to hear about any studies. They didn't want to hear about realities. They simply wanted to do things the way that they had always done in the past. And I think that's a very positive change that's happened over the last decade or so.
A couple of comments just from my perspective. I think when it comes to organizations improving their diversity and inclusion, it really has to come down from leadership. If leadership makes it a priority and they walk the talk, that's the only way it can be successful. I mean, improvements in hiring practices, improvements probably need to be made in many companies, employee manuals, changes in board seats, all that for sure needs to happen if it hasn't already, and it needs to be very thoughtful. But I don't think improvements are going to happen by accident, and simply updating a manual to be, you know, more inclusive, that's not going to fix a problem. It needs to be upfront and center in communication from leadership, so that all employees are aware how important it is to an organization. Otherwise, I feel like a firm will never really embody it as an important value.
Fair enough. So we have another question. This is in terms of aspirants, whenever they take CFA or have completed their CFA program. The next question they always ask is, what skills do they require to get into the investment banking? So would you care to shed some thought on that, or shed some light on this one, Stuart or Emily or Amit?
I remember when I went through the interview process when I came out of my MBA, and I'll give you a true story, and maybe I shouldn't share it, but I'm going to share it anyways. So I went to Toronto with ironically my roommate who would get one of the jobs that I wanted, and there was, I don't know, they kind of had a hiring day or days for people from Ontario. Then they had this hiring day for a number of us that were from outside of Ontario, basically people that would work in Toronto in investment banking, then eventually get moved out to a Vancouver, a Calgary, etc. So there's a couple of us from U of Calgary, one from U of Alberta, 3 or 4 from BC, a couple from the Maritimes. So it was interesting because you went through that, I think it was like 9 or 10 interviews. And ironically, my roommate ended up getting the job, but they were pretty intense interviews. Like everybody had a role. Like there was a financial analyst that was digging deep on you on what's the Black-Scholes model, not what is it as an option pricing, but literally here's a piece of paper, show me, write it out for me. Those sort of interviews. We had an HR person that was talking more about, or asking you questions about how you work as a team, et cetera, et cetera. So they were pretty intense. And then of course there's a lunch in the middle of all that where you're to meet executives, you're supposed to have social networking skills. But it's funny, a very quick story. So my roommate got the job and we ended up both going to Toronto. I worked for CIBC, he worked for Scotia McLeod, it was called at the time. And we went out for beers on a Friday. And one of the guys that was with him was one of the guys that interviewed me. And he told me at the end of the interview that it was a 10 out of 10. The interview stopped early. He said, look, you're a 10 out of 10. I don't need to ask any more questions. So I thought I had this job. So we're having a beer and I said, I don't know if you remember me, but I was that guy that you said was really good. I was surprised I didn't get the job. And now this dates me completely because I hope this wouldn't happen today. He said, yeah, well, you made a mistake in the HR interview. And I said, what do you mean I made a mistake? Well, they asked, like, what do you do for fun? And you mentioned you had a girlfriend. And like, we're going to work you 18 hours a day. You can't have a life outside of this. And that's how investment banking was at the time. It was all about, you were all in, you're going to work crazy hours for the first 3 to 4 years doing the prospectuses and going through hell, quite frankly. And then when you move up to the VP level and a director, managing director, you'll do more networking and salesmanship. But that was a real eye opener. That's how I lost that job. But I stayed. That roommate ended up being my roommate in Toronto for a year. And I'll tell you, I was probably working 50, 60-hour weeks consistently. I never saw him. He was at the office by 6 a.m. and he would be taking a taxi home at 1 a.m. 6 days a week. And then all day Sunday, he slept. So I didn't see him on the Sundays either. So that was investment banking years ago. I know it's changed, but I think number one, to answer your original question, I'm sorry for going on and on with that. Number one is you have to have very high marks. They won't even, investment bank is not going to consider somebody that has a high 2 GPA. They're looking for that GPA of 3.6, 3.7, 3, 3.9, et cetera. And then you've got to be willing to roll up your sleeves and work like you never have before. And it is just that part of it in investment banking that, people don't talk much about, but if you know people that do it, that's kind of the lifestyle.
That sort of gives an eye-opener for all the attendees here who are aspirants for the investment banking. But Emily and Amit, your thoughts are on this?
I've never been into investment banking, so I really can't provide inputs on that side. But yeah, whatever Stuart said completely resonates, in terms of how we used to work when we used to work for CA firms in India. Same culture, you work 14, 15 hours a day, non-stop, 6 days a week. It was shitload of sure. Yeah. Same experience.
I finished my MBA in 2008. So much like Stuart, my experience with, colleagues of mine from school that were getting into investment banking. But this was a little bit, well, I guess 14 years ago almost, but identical to Stuart's experience. If you didn't have the highest grades, like literally top of the class in the MBA program, you weren't even getting an interview. And the handful of people that I know were successful landing those jobs. It was 7 days a week, 15-hour days, like that was what it was. And the commitment was doing that for a couple of years, and the people that could maybe hack it for that long would then maybe get promoted into the next level. But it was, a really tough decision, I think, for some of them, whether that's something they wanted. But if that's what you want, I think you will want to expect that sort of lifestyle. And from the people that I know that did it, they didn't do it for more than, I'd say, 4 years, sort of max, and used it as a stepping stone in their careers.
Okay, so Emily, just another question for you, actually. Do you see any difficulty as a woman to start career in investment banking? And do you feel when the percentage of chartered CFA holders is so low, what is your advice for women pursuing financial profession?
I guess what I would say is that today, the way that the industry is moving, I think that there is more of an opening for a motivated and talented and educated and smart female in our industry. The world wants those people, whether it's a female or any other kind of diverse background. The world is craving those individuals to raise them up and have them be successful within all of the organizations in our industry. So I think this is actually a really good time, better than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I think that is promising to see. I personally try to be a mentor and as motivating as I can to those around me. So I continue to believe that if you can be seen as a leader and offer the assistance that you can to those up and coming that will be leaders, 10, 20 years from now, that I have somewhat of a duty to help along the next generation. And I think many people like me also want to do that. So reach out to people that have either a job that you would like or that you see they've been successful, and whether they have a background similar to you or not. I think those that are successful do want to help others be successful. We've all had mentors, and we also want to be a mentor to those up and coming. And I think it just takes someone coming out and asking. I don't think people come out and offer to be your mentor, and it doesn't necessarily even happen in a formal way. But reach out, ask someone for a coffee, get to know them, learn from them, ask for advice. Those would be my comments.
Okay, perfect. So I guess we're gonna have to be respectful about the time, and we just have a little bit of time for one last question, and we're gonna try and squeeze that one. So a lot of CFA and CPA candidates, some CFA candidates later on pursue CPA and some CPA candidates later on pursue CFA. Would it be, so they do that. And at the same time, do you think those who pursue CPA can later on get into CFA and still get some investment knowledge with the accounting companies that they work for? And the fact that when they pursue their CFA, and with CFA becoming more and more common these days, do you think the CFA is being diluted with its, with its power over, in comparison to what it was a couple of years ago? And it's a bit of a mix and match question, but any thoughts around this, Stuart, Amit, or Emily?
I guess I'll give my thoughts. So to the question, if I understood it correctly, can you be doing both, or is there value to it? Really depends on what you want your career to be. Like I say, I always viewed that a strong CFO is somebody who understands accounting, finance, investor relations, financial markets or treasury products. But you can't have everything. You just don't have enough years to have your career to have everything. So, it depends the path you want to go. If it's a CFO route, then I think finance and accounting are both important, but you don't have to have everything. Like I've got a strong chief accountant where I am now with it. Because she's so strong, I don't have to worry day to day about accounting because I know that she's kind of got that. So as you move up the ladder, you build your teams almost like a puzzle. You hire a second person based on the first one, etc. So, I think you can have both if you want. It really depends on your career aspirations. I've never worked for an accounting firm, so I can't speak to what they do. Your question or comment about is there a worry about things being diluted? I don't think so at all. The more knowledge you can have, the better. The CFA, in my opinion, is still the gold standard. There's always been an argument if you could go to a top MBA school, Harvard or Wharton, something like that, is that better? Maybe it is in a lot of ways because of the networking and the potential career openings. But I mean, nobody is ever, I've had the CFA since 1999, I think. I've never heard once somebody any part of the world say that it's not a strong or not the strongest designation to have in finance. So I think that's what you want to stick to. But having both, I think, is very helpful. But it depends on what your career aspirations are. Not sure if I fully answered that, Harry, but
No,
maybe somebody else can do a better job.
Well, that sounds pretty good. Emily or Amit, either one of you.
Sure. I guess I can just comment from someone that works at my firm that I know that has both designations. He came from an accounting background, had his CPA, went from an accounting firm to our company several years ago, and his really in-depth understanding of accounting definitely helped him complete the CFA. I'm not sure about many of the people here today, but I would say that the CFA program was maybe about 50% accounting, like in total. I'm not sure if that's close, but I think that's maybe close, that it's almost half accounting, some levels more than others, but he didn't struggle at all with any of the accounting material. And he is now our financials analyst. So he covers all of our banks, our insurance companies. And you have to be a really good accountant, I think, to be a very successful analyst for these types of businesses. And I don't think he could be as good an analyst today if he didn't have both of these designations and both of this experience, like both of these, behind him. So much like Stuart said, I think it depends where you want to go. The CFA may not be the be-all end-all, depending on what you want in your career. A CPA might give you even more. And I think in some cases, like this example I gave, the CPA actually did help him attain his CFA, and helped him attain the job that he has, because he's that much better in this particular role.
Okay, you know what I think? I think Stuart and Emily have already brought forward all the relevant points. I'll just say one thing. You know, if you, as a candidate, if you want to learn the skill set which will allow you to learn in depth how to put together financial statements, you know, the income and loss statement and the balance sheet and all the appendices and all the notes and all those things. If you want to learn, you know, how to put them together, accounting designation is what you need. That is what will teach you how to do that stuff. But if you really want to analyze all those balance sheets, and then you need CFA skills, the financial skills which are taught in CFA. And both of these designations complement each other. Just the way Emily said, I think it's close to 50-60% is accounting in CFA, from what I have been told by my other friends as well. For those who have done that, the CPA designation, CFA becomes relatively easy, and it provides you with skill set to do the financial analysis, which otherwise I think just as a CPA or as a CA, you might not have. So these two designations complement each other depending on what you want to do.
All right, that sounds perfect. Like I said, we only had this much of time for today, but you know, we would like to thank the three of you to take out your time today to guide us through your thought process and, you know, giving advice to the attendees here today. So as a thank you for your time and effort, CFA Society Winnipeg will be making a donation on your behalf to Siloam Mission. And also we have our annual forecast dinner on January 18th next year, for which Eva will be sending out further details to the people who are subscribed to the CFA Society Winnipeg. So thank you all for coming in today and joining this event virtually, and we do appreciate your time. Thank you so much again.
Thank you, Harry. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone, and good luck.
Yeah, thank you. Good job, Harry.
Thank you, Stuart.